I've clicked on the global tropical RE for January the 10th, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, the thought expression are mine alone, and when making decisions to have any tropical cyclones, look towards your local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. We've got several systems active across the tropics today. We're looking at several disturbances and potential for tropical cyclone development that could impact land over the next week. We're going to start off talking about briefly a couple systems active in the Indian Ocean. We've got Invest 96S here on the northwestern part of your screen. This system is a very, very small area of low pressure and might have a very small chance to develop. Right now, like I said, it's very small, and there's a lot of shear from all this thunderstorm activity west of Indonesia. It's creating a lot of easterly flow over that system. So development doesn't seem likely with that system, but at the surface, it does look like a pretty well-defined area of low pressure, so if it can get some convection bubbling up around the center and sustaining, you could get a brief tropical cyclone out of that, but development is not likely. And the good news is, either way, development, if development occurs, no impacts to land will be felt there, as the system is just in the middle of nowhere, as you can see. Now, on the other side of the equator, it's off your screen, but we do have an Invest, I believe it's 98B in the Bay of Bengal. That system is also fairly disorganized, and significant development is not anticipated with that system. And the main real threat there is from heavy rainfall in Sri Lanka and southern India. But the main parts of this video is going to be focusing on some development potential in northern Australia. You can see where all that convection is blowing up there, and just east of Madagascar. And we're going to start off east of Madagascar and come back to the Australian region in just a bit. Now, this is an 850 millibar vorticity or spin plot on the GFS. The vorticity is shown in yellow here, and you can also see the wind barbs at 850 millibars, just about a kilometer off the ground. And you can see we've got this trough axis here, northeast of Madagascar. We've got westerly winds on the northern side, easterly winds on the southern side, and we've got an axis generally like this. And over the coming days, this eastern part of this trough will be diving south, and development appears likely here. In fact, the models are pretty good agreement that some development will occur. And you can see the GFS immediately agreeing on that, forming a tropical cyclone by early next week. And we have a storm, potentially strengthening storm, passing very, very close to Mauritius and potentially even Rodrigues. Now, this is where we start to get into a little bit of uncertainty already on track. The models are not exactly too well in agreement of the exact track of this storm. And one factor that we do have to consider is this is a large trough axis here. It spans a long region. So the question here is, where do you get an area of low pressure to develop here? We're seeing the GFS and European agree on the eastern end of this trough, as this part is the one that dives south, but do you potentially get maybe another part of this trough to dive down as well? And could you get maybe an area of low pressure to develop, say, along the middle part of this trough? And could that lead to a track further west? Alongside that, there's a bit of subtlety in the the steering flow in the low levels. This is the GFS and European at the same time, and you can see there's a ridge down south here, southeast of Madagascar. On the European run, this is a little bit further north. You can see the ISO bars here are a little bit further north. Here you can see on the European and the GFS, it's just a little bit further south. It doesn't look like much of a difference, but if we look at a sounding from the GFS, you can see that flow for the system is pretty much due south. So this system is going to be tracking due south at this time. But if I get a sounding from the European at the same time, you can see there's a little bit more of a southwesterly component to the steering flow at the low levels, and that might allow the system to go a little bit more west of due south and get the storm further west. And you can see some of the impacts of that on the European, where we have a storm forming and intensifying west of Mauritius this time, and we actually get a storm coming right through La Réunion next week. So there's a bit of uncertainty there, and really, in terms of exactly which one is going to be right here, we don't know. And the main thing to do right now is just watch and see how this trough evolves over the next few days and see where the actual area of low pressure develops on these models. Once we do get an area of low pressure developed, I'd imagine a lot of the uncertainty will go away in terms of having tracks that spread, from Madagascar all the way into in between Mauritius and Rodrigues, as we do have sort of that type of a split going on right now in the modeling. But the main key message here for areas like Rodrigues, Mauritius, and La Réunion, and even eastern Madagascar is that something is likely to form in the southwest Indian Ocean east of Madagascar next week. You can see that here with a high chance of development from Mateo, France. And there might be some room for intensification. This is a European upper level air look, and you can see we have a favorable environment here with an upper level ridge over the system. That will be a low shear environment, and there's also potentially a jet streak here southeast of it. That could help intensification, and that could allow maybe some type of intensification into a cyclone as the system comes through, but nothing is certain right now. There's just a lot of uncertainty on track, so just stay tuned to Mateo, France, and I'll leave a link to that, to this website that I'm seeing right here in the description below, and also leave some local weather office stuff like Mateo, Madagascar in the description below. Now, alongside that, it is worth noting that as this trough does come south, there is a little part of it that does come west of the northern tip of Madagascar. You could sort of see this increased region of vorticity on the GFS develop there. And it's worth noting that there could be some potential development here. This is the European upper air look again. The system is there on the tail end of that trough. And you've got a fairly low shear environment, it looks like here. And there might be some room for the system to develop. Now, something that the system may have to contend with is some dry air from either Madagascar or Mozambique. And so that may limit the system a little bit. But it is worth noting that there could be maybe something trying to form in the Mozambique channel on the tail end of that trough. Now we're going to move to the Australian region now, as we have potential development here in the northern part of Australia. You can see this is the analysis from the GFS, and we have a broad area of low pressure spanning across a large region of Australia. You can actually see some of the thunderstorm activity associated with this. You've got a lot of thunderstorm activity just offshore and onshore as well. And this will be the story for Australia over the next week, really, as the system is not going to be in a hurry to get anywhere. And really the question is, how much development do we actually get out of this system? This system will be, like I said, still very broad. So that's not going in favor of development, but it also will be dealing with land interaction a lot. You can see a lot of this low is right over Australia. Now, something to watch for over the coming days is, do we get maybe a lobe of low pressure on the western end of this, north of Western Australia? That could potentially develop into some tropical cyclone. Or do we get something trying to develop here in the Gulf of Carpentaria as it tracks south, and could we get something developing there? The GFS shows this type of scenario here. The European shows two lobes of low pressure in a similar fashion. We have one here off or just over the Northern Territories, and one in the Gulf of Carpentaria. And really we're just watching for water time here, and how much water time do these two areas of low pressure get. Now, the most important thing here is that these systems will be sitting here for a long time. You can see they're sitting here now, and this is a week out on the European, and it's still sitting over Northern Australia. So regardless of development, heavy rainfall is a certainty here, as the system does sit here. So it will be constantly tapping into the warm waters north of Australia, meaning a lot of deep moisture may be able to be brought over land. Now, this is the tropical cyclone forecast from the Bureau of Meteorology. They've got 3 areas on their map. You can see 3U there. That's the first lobe of low pressure. They're giving the system about a moderate chance of development, looks like this weekend. And 5U, that's the Gulf of Carpentaria system. They're giving the system right now a low chance of development. And you can also see there's a system here, 4U, further northwest. This system may have a chance to develop as well, but excuse me, will not be a likely significant land threat either, as the system is really in the middle of the ocean with the exception of the Cocos Islands there. So if we need to talk about that system, we will in the future. But you can see here, potential for tropical cyclone development is there across northern Australia, and either way, heavy rainfall will likely be a certainty there across the region as that system sits around. Finally, I'm going to show you the global tropics and hazards outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. As, like I said, the southern hemisphere is likely to get busy, and we may stay busy for the next few weeks, potentially going towards February. You can see here on this plot, we've got several areas of potential development next week. You can see areas of development pretty much where we are right now, showing our system for Madagascar and Mauritius and La Reunion, but also that system potentially on the western tail end of that trough. And you can also see the potential development with that system just sitting over northern Australia right now. But as we go into week 3, this is into late January now, we're seeing potential for development in the southwestern Indian Ocean yet again, but also expanding a little bit further east. We could potentially be seeing development in the South Pacific, as we get towards the latter half of this month, and you can see potential development there in the Western Pacific as well. As I showed in my last video, or one of my videos last week, there was a lot of rising air over this part of the world, which favors tropical cyclone development. And over the coming days, or coming weeks rather, this will slowly begin propagating eastwards, and we will potentially be seeing tropical cyclone development as a result of that further east. But we've got time before that happens, and we've got a lot of systems that we're going to be tracking before that actually happens. So stay safe in all the areas mentioned today ahead of these potential storms. I'll have future videos out this week as the systems do develop. And stay safe and have a good rest of your day across the Southern Hemisphere. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.